You can't imagine the culture shock of going to a predominantly white school far away from home. Go. The 1990s New York City whites were very, very different. I say that only to begin the discussion at you can't imagine the culture shock of going to a predominantly white school far away from home. 1999, I set out on something brand new. I'd never been away from home before. University of Pittsburgh at Bradford, Western Pennsylvania, almost the most northern to the most western tip of Pennsylvania. Almost. It's almost there. That's how far away from New York City I was geographically. It's the furthest I'd ever been away from home, not being with family. Having said that, I think I was more excited at the newness of the situation because I'm very much a new environment, because I kind of really came into myself at 16. That's when I really began exploring the ideas of being away from home at some point, because I always thought I would. I just never knew how it was going to happen. In saying that, I get on a bus to Olean, New York with $17 in my pocket, a duffel bag on my shoulder, a suitcase, a pillow, and a comforter. That is it. I quickly found out that all white people are not the same. My shout out to my New York City 90s whites. At the time, I didn't appreciate y'all. I did, but I didn't. When I met non-New York City whites, it changed my idea of white people, because I had never met white people who hadn't been around black people before. And in having that be the case, you find yourself, you're explaining, but you're being patient at the same time, because me personally, I can recognize when somebody hasn't had an experience with something. So what do you do? And I've always been one to give grace. Plus, my mom raised a nice kid. I was a jerk, but not in situations where I probably should just be nice. And if somebody had an honest question about something they didn't know, I was more than willing to answer a well-meaning question. If I was being asked a derogatory racial question, but under the veil of inquisitiveness, that would upset me. And I didn't tolerate that. So in saying that, those were the two kinds of whites I would then encounter once I got to school. Once I got to school, I quickly realized that what I now call urban whites, because there's some whites from Philly that I met while at school who were completely hip with the program and understood what was going on, and even helped me kind of guide my way through this new found whiteness that I was seeing. Like, they was white too, but they was white. So they got a chance to listen to how not white like them that they were. So they'd be like, hey, you're from the city, right? Come here, let me talk to you. Hey, when you go over there, don't do this. Tread lightly. Use your head. But in taking that advice, I still went about it how I went about it. I wasn't a kid lacking confidence. I was a kid lacking experience. And with every confident step you take, the more experiences that come to you. But the more experiences that come to you, the more you realize, I've never encountered this before. So now you either tread light or meet it head on. I don't know what dictates whether or not I'll tread lightly or meet head on. I think it depends on what kind of friction I start off with. Like, if there's any kind of friction, like where somebody's giving me sauce, then I'll probably take it head on. Pause. But if I see that the environment is welcoming, then I'll tread lightly and I'll do what the environment does. So in saying that, I did a lot of that. There were a lot of white environments that I encountered that were welcoming. There were a lot of white environments I encountered that were very judgmental. And there was some white environments that I encountered that I quickly found were dangerous. Those are other stories for another time. But I'm just saying, it was a daunting experience being introduced to a kind of white that I didn't know existed. That is the big takeaway from anything that had to do with school. All white people are not the same. There are some white people who empathize with black and brown plight, and that's cool. But at the end of the day, I still kind of look at it like, but you're still white. And the privilege of it, I appreciate the support, but still, and I try to drive that point home to like my white friends who do think and feel that way. And they understand it because I never presented ignorantly. I always look to teach and learn because I want to learn how people arrive at certain thought spaces. But in saying that, when you're introduced to different kinds of what you thought were once the same people, it really gives you an opportunity to dissect what you were really thinking before that moment. Before that moment, I could honestly say there were portions of my thoughts that thought racially. After I got to that environment and saw that there were poor white people too, because that was also a culture shock. I didn't know poor white people existed. New York City 90s whites did not present as poor. Or maybe I was just around. I went to school. No, I did go to school in a good neighborhood, but I didn't see no poor white people. I don't even know where they would live at. Where would you house a poor white person in Brooklyn? Where would they live? I've been to Sheepshead Bay. There's poor white neighborhoods in Sheepshead Bay, Mill Basin, perhaps. I just don't know. Kensington is far from moneyless. So I know white people live over there, and so do Jews. And Jews don't let poor white people live around them. They don't, though. Jews do not tolerate poor whiteness. I promise you. I've heard them say it in like undertones. But anyway, so that's also where I learned social climate. Like, what does something look like in the moment versus what can it look like if I overreact? So when you read an environment and you realize that if you just maintain your composure, that environment will chill. That gives you a different perspective on who you are as a person and in newfound spaces, because you truly can control your own climate by how you behave. And I often found myself being overly polite because I was afraid to be anything else. I was a jerk. If you was going to be a jerk with me, like, don't play with me, white dude. Like seriously. Like, I'll crash out on you in the dark. When the sun go down, I'll crash out on you. And I did. I did. Oh, man, that's a story for another time, too. But yeah, I went to a predominantly white school, and it wasn't that easy. But I learned a lot. You know what's crazy? I learned more socially and psychologically than I did academically when I went away to school. But that's a whole nother story for another time. Go.